A database is a way of organizing information. It's a way of categorizing information, being able to retrieve information, and so forth. There's many different databases out there. The one we're going to be using here is the database feature within Excel or the database feature within Google Docs. And when we're talking about databases, it's first important to understand that there are what a record is. A record is basically all the information that pertains to a particular item. So for example, here, all of this information here pertains to bagels, or if you went down here, all of this information pertains to blueberries. So if you were thinking about a database of student records, then instead of foods here as a field, you might have name, student name, or student ID. And then all of the information across here would be information pertaining to that student, maybe their test scores and the classes they've taken and so forth. So, for example, when it talks about individuals, like individuals here at the university, we have massive databases. We have a warehouse of databases, so to speak, that all talk to each other and give you information about all of the students. And of course, you can retrieve some of that under your own CSUN login. So if we were to look at like asparagus right here, this is all the information pertaining to this particular record. The record is asparagus. But there's a number of fields of information across which you can compare asparagus with avocados, with bagels, etc. So we could look at potassium, we could look at zinc, we could look at niacin. So we could see like how many milligrams of niacin are there per serving size of let's say asparagus right here. So it's 0.95 milligrams of niacin per serving size. In asparagus, we can contrast that with 0.65 in apricot nectar per serving size. So again, it's rather intuitive when we look at this. Basically, we can just find the particular cell and see the information that pertains to a particular record, like in this case here, apricot, and particular field, niacin, and where those two intersect, we can see the actual value here. So for example here again, 0.65 milligrams of niacin per serving size of apricot. Now databases can be massive. This database here is actually very small, but you can still see as I scroll across this that it has a lot of nutritional information. And then we can also scroll down. We can see obviously there's a lot of different records in this database. And so you may notice that the first row here is frozen. So over on the left side you'll see 1 here, meaning the first record. It appears to be frozen because it didn't scroll when I scrolled down to look at the lower entries. And if you scroll back up again, you'll see that indeed that first row stays fixed. Well, basically when we're talking about programs like Microsoft Excel or Google Spreadsheets, it's that first row which basically differentiates a spreadsheet from a database. A spreadsheet is a number cruncher. In other words, one's primarily for doing calculations, for doing, arithmetic problems. But when we're talking about a database, you want to keep the information pertaining to a particular record together. So everything we see across a particular row here pertains to cantaloupes, and you want to make sure that that stays always with cantaloupes. And so you want to move all of the rows together so that the data doesn't get confused over here with the particular record it pertains to. The way to do that is to define the first row of information as your category headers. Okay, so they may be called category headers or field names. And right now you may see these little triangles. Each of these triangles means that there's more information here. I can pull this down and I can see that I could sort on this particular category, on this particular field, or I could, select a particular item on this field. So anytime you see one of these small arrows, it indicates that there's a menu which is hidden. And by clicking on the arrow, you can see what's in there and perform the operation that you're interested in. Now, if you wanted to take just a regular table that you had made and convert it into a spreadsheet, the thing you'll need to do is to set the filter on. You see by the check mark right here that this filter is currently on. So if I turn that off, this will no longer sort. There's no way to sort or to select records and so forth here. It basically looks just the way a spreadsheet would, each cell kind of by itself. And if we want to, again, make sure that all of these rows stay together, we need to turn that filter on. And we did that here by simply going to Data and selecting Filter. And now you can see that the filter is on here. And again, a filter means a way of taking that data, filtering it, being able to look at the components of that data. So for example, if I was to look over here at food types, I could take this and I could say I'd like to, say, sort ascending. And now you can see that I've got all the baked goods together. And as I scroll down here, I can see all the beverages are together, all the dairy products and so forth together. So we can see all of this information here in various different forms. So if I wanted to see which food has the highest vitamin C concentration per serving size, I would simply say sort descending, which would mean the high values would be at the top. And we could see here that, not surprisingly, that orange juice has the highest vitamin C content per serving size. And conversely, if I wanted to see which has the lowest, I would say simply sort ascending here, and we can see there's many foods which really have essentially no vitamin C. So the sort feature allows you to organize all of these individual records on a particular category. And so again, if these might be student test scores, you could simply click at the top and say sort descending and see who scored the highest on any particular test, and the records would stay intact. You'll notice over here that our order is very confused from the way it was before, so I'll sort ascending again, and now we have an alphabetical arrangement of all the foods in this particular set. Databases also allow you to get quick access to information. If I was to select over here and say I'd really like to see, what do we know about butter, I would type that in right there, and I can see all of those records that have the word butter in it. And so that I can compare those, or I might just want to be able to select a particular record from within that database. If I can delete that entry, as I just did right there, I'm going to go right back to the full set of data there. So I can zoom in on a particular record or set of records, or I can go back to my full set just by simply changing the search criteria right there. Again, I could say turn off the select all here, and I could just look at apple pie, or I could look at apples raw, and I can now choose my various ones here, compare those with celery, for example. And so you could go through there and now compare the items that you want to simply by selecting them in this case. Now in this case here, we can just go back up and click here to select them all again, and now we have all of our data there. So when we're looking at the filtering process, the simplest way here is to sort ascending or descending, which will do an alphanumeric sort, or choose individual selections, as we've done down below. Another way we can look at the data is by filtering on various different criteria. If you were to select any one of those little triangles right there, you could do a filter on that particular topic. So for example, right now I'm looking at vitamin A, and I could say, all right, I'm looking for vitamin A here, which is, let's say, greater than or equal to, let's just choose here, 0.07. All right. And now what we've done is we've found all of those food items and so forth here which have a vitamin A content which is greater than our particular criteria. Again, to eliminate that, you could simply just go back there and just say choose one, and you should be back to all of your original records. Now you can also select on multiple criteria. So for example, let's say that we were going to look at riboflavin here, and we selected riboflavin. We said, I'd like to look at riboflavin which is greater than or equal to a particular value. Let's say we chose here 0.14, and now we said that we would also like to do something, say, and choose another criteria, say that riboflavin was less than or equal to, and we could choose a category like this. And of course, in that case, we just eliminated all of our different options because our variables here were such that they were mutually exclusive. But you get the concept of how you can select now on multiple criteria within a particular field. And then you can clear the filter, which just basically takes you back to where you were before. Finally, we can sort on multiple different fields or filter on multiple different fields. So for example, if I went to potassium right over here, I could say that I'm going to choose potassium which is greater than or equal to a particular value here. So let's just choose one here. I could type it in as well. And now I could say, okay, and now let's look not only at potassium, but let's look at riboflavin. And we're going to say riboflavin here, which is greater than or equal to, in this case I'll just type in here, 0.15. And now I can see that I reduced this load down. And so basically those two criteria here, we just basically looked at potassium greater than a certain amount and riboflavin greater than a certain amount. So we can filter our data on multiple criteria to get to the particular thing we're interested in. I'll clear the filter once more again by clicking right here, which goes back to our original. When we look at this table right here, we see that the first row and the first column are frozen. In other words, if I was to scroll across here, the food category stays put. And if I was to scroll up and down, the field names stay put. The way that that's done is typically referred to as freezing. Right now I'm going to unfreeze those panes. And you can see if I move now things do go off screen, and you lose either your category headers or your record names. So the way to actually freeze them is to choose a particular cell, and then say that I'd like to freeze the panes at that point, and it basically chooses the row above it and the column to the left, and now those are frozen. You can see I can move back and forth like this and up and down, and they stay put.